the Gophers started last weekend playing Creighton. Solid team. Had to come back, but got the win, 2-1. What were your takeaways from seeing the Gophers kind of seal that in the opening weekend?
Yeah, I mean, easily my biggest takeaway is that usually when a game gets into a run of play, like in like the last few years and even my entire time covering Minnesota, a challenge has been being able to break that run of play. If you watch as much college soccer as Mark and I, it's very, very hard once a game swings a certain way for you to break the rhythm of that game. And so in this case, Creighton goes up 1-0 in the 5th minute on an absolute world-class banger. Manrique, their all Big East midfielder, gets like the smallest window in the entire world, hits it out of the air, upper 90, like opposite post, completely unsavable, entirely unsavable in the 5th minute. And then they continue to press. They are just absolutely disrupting Minnesota. They are having more of the possession. They are fouling. They are scrappy. They just like everything about the game was on their terms. Yeah. And Minnesota, by the end of the first half, kind of slipped in and controlled a little bit more of the run of play, but it still was not looking like any sure thing that they were coming back. They go into halftime, come out. They make a little bit of a tweak in the midfield. They move Sophia Bowman into the holding midfield spot from that sort of 8-10. Okay. And she just starts looking so controlling from that 6. She all of a sudden, she gets the ball. She's surveying the field. She's controlling the pace of play. She's controlling the run of the pass. And they just find a way to flip the entire script and all of a sudden get the game going their way. It's very rare that I've seen any team do this. Not a Gopher thing, like any team do this. And then Caroline Birdsell, just absolutely ridiculous. We posted their goals everywhere. I mean, she was unbelievably hyped last season. I think we're seeing why she was unbelievably hyped. She can finish, and like finishing, I like some people say, like you are just born with it. You are a natural finisher or you aren't. She just is a finisher and just absolutely lethal. For the very rough context for people, the Gophers last year were somewhere between like 80 or 90 in terms of RPI. Creighton was somewhere around like 140, but they have a brand new coach. So on paper, Minnesota should win this game, or at least, like more times than not should win this game. Yeah. But winning it this way gave me so much more confidence because it wasn't going well. It actually was going kind of shitty in the first half. Yeah. And they find a way to come back. And so that grit and that belief is something that head coach Aaron Chastain spoke about post game. Just the idea of, no, that like she even said in her literal interview, you can see it online. She said, even if we didn't win this game, I was unbelievably happy because of the belief that the team showed.
Yeah. It's a tough team to match up against. For the U, it is the non-conference where there's not a lot of win in terms of beating Creighton, but it is a tough challenge. So good enough to get the win. Talk about also coming up this next weekend, we have you heard anyone try to call this anything? Minnesota versus St. Thomas. I'm not trying to name it. I'm not trying to claim the name if it's the Minnesota Cup, but it's the only 2 D1 teams for women's soccer in Minnesota.
I guess the fact that we haven't tried, I guess, is the failure. I mean, I don't know who else would give a shit about.
I like to respect the fans.
Well, I think in this situation that might just be us, but
throw a poll up. Maybe we have to throw a poll up.
Yeah. Maybe we'll throw out some options. Actually, we will do that this week because they don't play until Sunday, so we'll throw some options out. Yeah. I just call it a crosstown rivalry. That's just like saying what it is, but I do think a rivalry makes sense. I mean, I do think it's cool that they played last year. They're playing again this year. It actually isn't that easy to build these non-conference schedules.
Sports that aren't soccer, because I follow, college basketball a lot as a side thing. Other sports have more dynamics where they won't just right away start this. Because of the levels and because of whatever. Yeah. So it is actually pretty cool that when they first become a D1 team, you can see this.
I love that they're playing every year. I think, to be honest with you, last year, I actually think St. Thomas fans, St. Thomas players, even like the staff, they ended up losing 5-0 to Minnesota at ELR. It was a home game for the Gophers. The game was so much closer than 5-0. I mean, the game was 3-0 until it was late. They played solid. I broadcast that game. Like, I was watching the game. And I think the score line freaked people out of like, oh God, we got crushed. I think they showed well in that game. And I think like on paper, St. Thomas is quote unquote supposed to lose to the Gophers. Like that's just on.
Well, they definitely should if you were measuring, budget and player. Yeah.
So all those things. So if you know that going in, the game can only be fun. Like go in knowing like, no, we can go in and show what we do.
It's great for St. Thomas. Yeah.
And so I love, and like for Minnesota to still schedule games like annually, if this ends up being like an actual annual game, I think that's really, really cool for Minnesota soccer.
Yeah.
It is. And yeah, I mean, 1 p.m. at the South Field. There's a little bit of a weird route you need to take to get into the stadium. We'll post that onto our social media and stuff. The team has actually done a really good job. They did some fun content with it and stuff too. So it's going to be packed. I mean, get there early. And here's a little hint. If the stands are too full, go watch from
the parking ramp.
The parking ramp, the third and second and even fourth stories are actually some of the best seats to watch games in that place.
I went to watch their game the other weekend, and I went to the parking ramp, and there was clearly, I don't know, it was an aunt or a grandma of some player, because she had both her chair in the parking ramp and balloons and she was repping. So it is, it's a nice move.
I have hung out and had a couple beers in the parking ramp, full disclosure, and I was like chatting with Cameron Rintoul's mom. Like, there's people who know.
It's because it's a very nice soccer field and there's good stands.
Yeah.
But you don't have any elevation. So being in the parking lot is kind of like being on the end zone line.
Yeah. You can see the run of play.
It's cool. Yeah. But that'll be fun for Minnesota. We'll throw up some poll to try to, we aren't going to define the rivalry name. We will let the fans define it. But in terms of the Gophers, Matt, like they came back on Creighton. They're going to face St. Thomas, obviously.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you specifically, like Megan Plashko has been the keeper for a couple of years, very solid on a team that competed a lot,
and is now starting for like a very highly touted TCU team, by the way.
And she had to do a lot of work for the Gophers when she played here because they face a lot. And now a freshman, so rare, Sarah Martin started the first game. Just talk about her. What's going on there?
I mean, you can't talk about that without giving such incredible credit to what Sarah Martin must have done during training camp, because
crazy.
I showed up to the exhibitions. I don't always write about the exhibitions anymore. Like we avoid getting too deep into it, but you go to the exhibitions. She starts the first one, and then Kamzu plays the second half. Then the second game, she starts the second one. Kamzu plays the second half.
Yeah.
And the issue was the defensive unit didn't get challenged at all in those exhibitions. Like not even a shot, like just no. And so every single thing that went into that decision was based on training. So we're not there every day. We're not seeing what happens. All I can tell you is like Aaron Chastain does not give someone jobs for no reason. Like you earn it. And frankly, it is not easy to earn a role on an Aaron Chastain team. Yeah. And so it shows that Sarah must have just come in ready to rock against a very good, very experienced veteran keeper in Kamzu, who, Kamzu has started multiple seasons at Montana, which is a very good program. She's a very good keeper. And so for Sarah Martin to earn that job is a huge credit to her and a huge credit to the keeping group, just to have that good culture where a brand new player, or, she was with the team last year but didn't play. And so I think, it's a huge props to her. She technically gave up a goal in that opening game, but I'm not really sure it was physically savable. And so I'm really excited to see how she does. She's one of multiple sort of first-time rotation pieces. Ashley Turk at right back, Carolyn Birdsell up front, Avery Petty in the midfield, Aaron Gabriel up front. Like there are multiple first-time contributors, and I'm forgetting some obviously, but there's multiple first-time contributors in this group. It's really impressive. That is not easy.
Right on. Before we move on to talk about just all of the Minnesotans who are playing D1 across the country, let's talk a little bit more. Just let me know. The Big Ten is a part of the college realignment, obviously driven by football and basketball, but soccer is not exempt to the change.
Yep.
And so The Big Ten is way different now. We have some both teams that are far away and also very good. We have pulled in Oregon. We pulled in other West Coast teams. Realistically, where do you expect the Gophers to finish this year?
Yeah, I think so. For context for folks, not surprisingly, if you just look at the preseason poll, UCLA and USC are not just like good teams and dangerous teams. They are some of the best teams in the entire country. And so
programs,
like they
UCLA,
are,
programs.
I mean, for folks who remember way back when, in 2018, when the Gophers made the NCAA tournament and won a game in the NCAA tournament, they played UCLA in the second round and I think lost 5-0. And obviously no one on those teams that are on this team anymore. So it's not to say anything specific, but just like that is the level that UCLA brings. They are, and USC, both of these programs are unbelievably strong. And so I think you are going to see a much more competitive field in terms of making the Big Ten tournament. Every single Big Ten team is basically ranked in the top like 10 to 20 teams RPI strength of schedule wise, because it is like self-perpetuating. If every team is good, it means everyone's strength of schedule is good. And so everyone's RPI also should be pretty strong. And so this year, the Big Ten tournament will have 10 teams. That's actually more than previously. Previously, I believe it was 8, which makes sense for new programs. And
a conference of 18.
It's just very, very, very tough. And so they got picked 14. I think if they finish 14th, it's pretty disappointing. I think if they hit sort of like their median quality, even that is above 14. I think their ceiling, like when I did my Sunshine and Rainbows prediction in the preview, I think their ceiling, if they really, really hit, like if they start to roll, I don't think it's crazy to think they can get into that sort of 6 to 10 range and even into that 6. Yeah. And like for context for folks, if it's a 10-team Big Ten tournament, that means the first 4 teams play in that sort of first round to make the bracket work. So I personally think if they want to have an ambitious goal, their goal should be, we not only make the Big Ten tournament, we don't play opening night. Like we make it to the 6 and we get to skip. And for those who are like, oh, they should aim higher, aim for a championship. If you make the top 6,
I was just going to interrupt you and say that was very ambitious.
Totally, but like teams regularly do the thing where they say like our goal is a Big Ten championship, our goal is whatever. If the Gophers make the top 6 in this Big Ten, that is such an unbelievable accomplishment, and I don't think it's outside of their ceiling. I think it's within their ceiling. I mean, when they were rolling in that second half against Creighton, if they can play like that as roughly their base, I think that's very possible.
Wow. That would be a step up for sure in the path of like Erin Chastain having a few years, building her program. Because not easy to level up in the Big Ten. Like I don't know. For people who watch equal time, it's tough. The Gophers don't have an easy time.
It's unbelievably tough. And the other thing I will note is it's doubly tough for the way they're starting this Big Ten, because you're only going to play either the LA teams or the Northwest teams. And all respect to Oregon and Washington, but playing the LA teams is far more difficult than playing the Northwest teams. And they start off with an away trip to LA.
No, I mean, PJ Fleck has it harder than Erin Chastain for sure, because his schedule got worse than hers. But no, it is a brutal thing of it's fun how, hey, the Big Ten is one of the big 2. It's not easy then to win in any. The track athletes, I imagine, just trying to compete with Oregon.
Dude, the Olympic sports, like obviously in conference realignment, all anyone talks about is football.
But they're big schools in those sports.
The Olympic sports, like arguably had an even bigger jump up. Like when you talk about like UCLA and like you said, Oregon, Washington, like these are Olympic sports powerhouses. And so it's going to be wild.